Nathaniel Price knew the sound of his mansion's silence better than his own son's voice. His routine was a predictable cycle of long hours at the office, business dinners, and a late return to an immaculate home where everyone was already asleep. On that day, however, chance broke the pattern. A meeting in New York City ended early, and he found himself driving home to Greenwich in the late afternoon light, an occurrence so rare it seemed to belong to another man's life. He entered without, announcing himself, expecting the usual quiet, the perfect order his money guaranteed. He expected to find a home empty of emotion, a reflection of the space he himself kept between him and his family. As he opened the heavy front door, he froze. The scene unfolding in the middle of his living room was so unexpected that his brain refused to process it for a moment. There, on her knees on the marble floor, was Eleanor, the young domestic worker, but it wasn't her that paralyzed him. Beside her, his 4-year-old son Caleb was balancing on his small colored crutches, determinedly holding a small cleaning cloth. With fierce concentration, the boy scrubbed at a small spot on the floor. The image was a surreal painting, the opulence of the room, the fragility of the child, and the simplicity of a shared task, a secret flourishing in the heart of his home without his knowledge. What truly stole Nathaniel's breath was the expression on his son's face. Caleb was smiling. It wasn't the restrained smile he sometimes showed in photos, but a wide, genuine grin that lit up his entire being. He was chatting with Eleanor, his voice full of a joy and confidence Nathaniel rarely witnessed. The interaction between them was fluid and natural, a dance of gestures and words that spoke of a deep complicity. In that moment, Nathaniel didn't see a sick child being cared for by an employee. He saw two friends, a team, sharing a moment of pure and simple happiness, a happiness of which he, the father, was not a part. The spell was broken when Caleb, turning, saw his father's figure standing in the doorway. The boy's smile vanished instantly, replaced by a look of surprise and a clear trace of fear. He tried to straighten up too quickly and nearly lost his balance. Elena, following the boy's gaze, shot to her feet, her face pale with shock. The cleaning cloth fell from her hand. The warm atmosphere of the room evaporated, giving way to a tense, heavy silence. Their secret joy had been discovered, and the fear of reprimand now hung in the air, visible and almost palpable. It was evident that this was a scene he was not supposed to see. Elena stammered an apology, her head bowed, her hands wringing her apron. "Good evening, Mr. Price. I'm sorry, I didn't know you. We were just finishing up." Nathaniel barely heard her. His eyes were fixed on Caleb, who was still clutching the small cloth as if it were evidence of a crime. Trying to keep his voice neutral, he asked, "Caleb, what are you doing on the floor?" The boy looked at his father, but his body was subtly turned toward Elena, as if seeking the correct answer from her. "I'm helping Miss Elena, Daddy," he said, his voice now much lower, the earlier spontaneity completely gone. It was then that the boy, in an effort to prove his worth, took a wobbly step towards his father and said the words that would change everything. "Look, Daddy, today I managed to stand all by myself for almost 5 minutes straight." The statement hit Nathaniel with the force of a punch. 5 minutes, the last report from the country's most expensive physical therapist said that milestone was, at minimum, another 6 months away. His gaze shifted to Elena, no longer with the confusion of a distant father, but with the disbelief of a man witnessing a miracle. How had this simple domestic worker achieved the impossible? The scene was no longer just about a secret. It was about a mystery. An absent father, a boy overcoming his limits, and a secret kept by a dedicated employee. How did Elena achieve what the doctors could not? If you want to discover the truth behind Caleb's progress, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and send a message of support to this incredible duo. They're going to need it. The silence in the room was heavy after Caleb went upstairs. Nathaniel approached Elena, who remained with her head bowed, awaiting her dismissal. "How long?" he asked, his voice controlled but laden with an intensity that made her flinch. "The exercises. How long have you been doing this with my son?" She hesitated, wringing the damp apron in her hands. "Since I started working here, sir. About 6 months." Her voice was almost a whisper. "But I swear I've never neglected my work. I do it during my lunch break or after I've finished everything. You can check the house. Everything is in order." She was defending herself against the wrong accusation. He wasn't worried about the cleaning. "Why?" he continued. "The most important question of all. You're not paid for this." Eleanor finally raised her gaze, and in it Nathaniel saw not just fear, but a disarming sincerity. "With all due respect, sir, Caleb was very lonely." She spoke carefully, measuring her words. "Mrs. Price is almost always busy with her engagements, and well, you work a great deal." She didn't say it as a criticism, but as a statement of fact. "I saw a sad little boy who just needed a friend, someone to play with him. The exercises were just an excuse for us to spend time together, to show him what he was capable of." Nathaniel's curiosity overcame his surprise. "And how do you know what to do? What exercises to teach?" It was then that Eleanor's story began to unfold. "I have experience with this, sir," she admitted. She told him about her younger brother, Daniel, who was born with a malformation in his legs. She described her own childhood, spent not in parks, but in the waiting rooms of physical therapy, clinics. She would watch every movement, every technique, every word of encouragement from the professionals. At home, she would become her brother's therapist, patiently replicating the exercises, turning the painful routine into a game so he wouldn't give up. She wasn't just a sister, she was Daniel's primary ally. She invented games to strengthen his muscles, created obstacle courses in their small backyard, and celebrated every wobbly step as if it were an Olympic gold medal. "When I first looked at Caleb," she continued, her voice choked with memory, "I saw in his eyes the same frustration I used to see in my brother, that desire to run, to be like the other kids, but trapped in a body that wouldn't obey. Helping Caleb wasn't a calculated decision. It was an impulse from the heart, a need to relive that role, to use her knowledge born of love to light the same flame of hope in another little boy." Nathaniel, now completely captivated by the story, asked the obvious question. "With all this knowledge, why do you work as a cleaner?" Eleanor gave a sad smile. "Because I don't have a degree, sir. In the real world, a lifetime of experience caring for someone is worthless without a piece of paper, and I need to work to help my family." She described her reality. A mother who cleaned offices at night, and a brother, now 16, who balanced school with a job at a grocery store. The dream of going to college for physical therapy was a luxury her family simply couldn't afford. As she spoke, Nathaniel felt a complex mixture of shame and admiration. This young woman's life was a daily battle, and yet she found the time and energy in her exhausting day to give his son what he, with all his resources, had neglected: time, dedication, and an unwavering faith in his potential. He looked at her hands, red and worn from heavy labor, and realized that the strength she possessed was of a kind he, the powerful businessman, had never known. The issue was no longer about her breaking a rule. The issue was about how deeply he had broken his own family. After Eleanor excused herself, Nathaniel remained in his office, his mind in a whirlwind. Her story, so full of hardship and love, served as a cruel mirror to his own life. He, with all his power and wealth, had failed to give his son what this young woman offered for free: her time and her faith. In that moment, he made a decision. It was no longer about questioning Elena's methods, but about understanding his own role. In that house, he asked her before she went to the kitchen about his wife's whereabouts. "Mrs. Clare went out to dinner with friends, sir. She said she would be back late." The answer only deepened the abyss of loneliness he felt that night. Claire arrived around midnight, bringing with her the scent of expensive perfume and the energy of a social evening. She found Nathaniel waiting for her in the dim light of the living room, an occurrence so rare it startled her. "Nate, did something happen? Is Caleb okay?" she asked, immediate concern in her voice. The question itself revealed the state of their marriage. His presence at home at this hour wasn't normal, but a harbinger of crisis. The house was just a place where they slept, and where problems, sooner or later, came to the surface to be dealt with. He stared at her with a seriousness she hadn't seen in years. He didn't beat around the bush. "We need to talk, Claire, about Caleb and about Elena." The maid's name, spoken with such gravity, made her tense. "Did you know she's been doing physical therapy exercises with our son every day?" The question hung in the air, direct and inescapable. Claire averted her gaze, setting her purse down on a chair, a small gesture to buy a precious second. Her silence was the answer Nathaniel already expected. She knew she had been an accomplice to a secret flourishing under her roof, a secret that, for some reason, she had also chosen to hide from him. The silent confirmation opened a new wound between them. "Yes, I knew," she finally admitted, her voice low. Nathaniel's next question was laden with hurt. "Why didn't you tell me?" It was then that Claire's composure shattered. "Tell you what, Nate," she retorted, the bitterness of years rising to the surface. "So you could turn the one thing that makes your son happy into another item on your checklist of problems to manage? So you could worry about lawsuits and legal liabilities?" I saw our son smiling, Nate, genuinely smiling, something I hadn't seen in months, and I wasn't going to let you take that away from him, not with your business-minded concerns. The confession turned into a painful accusation, the floodgates of years of resentment breaking open. "You're never here," she said, her voice rising. "And when you are, you don't see Caleb. You see a medical diagnosis, a set of limitations. You ask if he's taken his medicine, if the doctor's appointment is scheduled. You never ask if he had fun, if he made a friend, if he was happy today." She took a deep breath, tears now visible. "Elena makes Caleb happy. She makes him believe he can overcome anything. Someone in this house needed to take care of his soul, since his father is only concerned with the reports." Her words hit him like physical blows. He had no defense, because deep down he knew she was right. He had become a manager of his son's life, not a father. He had outsourced not only his son's physical care, but his happiness, expecting nannies and therapists to fill the void he himself created with his absence. The secret Claire and Elena shared wasn't just about exercises. It was a silent pact to provide the emotional support that he, the father and husband, had abdicated in the name of his career, his ambition, his own escape from the pain his son's condition caused him. "I want to change," Nathaniel said finally, his voice choked, breaking the heavy silence. "I know I've said this before, Claire, but today was different. Today I really saw Caleb for the first time. I saw the brave, happy boy he is, and I realized I'm losing everything, that I've already lost so much." He looked at his wife, his eyes pleading for a chance. "I don't want to be a ghost in this house anymore. I want to be the father Caleb deserves and the husband you married. I want our family back." The promise this time was born not of guilt, but of a painful and profound revelation. Claire watched him, the skepticism in her eyes, warring with a spark of hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. "I want to believe you, Nate, more than you know," she replied, her voice tired. "But I've heard promises before. I'm exhausted of words. I need to see action." She then gave him an ultimatum, a single clear test of his commitment. "Tomorrow, at 8 in the morning, Elena does the exercises with him in the garden. Cancel your meetings. Turn off your phone. Be there. Be truly present. Show me, don't tell me, that this time it's for real." The challenge was set. Nathaniel's redemption would begin at sunrise. That night, sleep did not come for Nathaniel. The words of Elena and the accusation in Claire's eyes replayed in his mind. For the first time, he saw himself not as the family's provider, but as its main absence. Before midnight, he picked up his cell phone, the tool of his trade, and began using it for a different purpose, to demolish his schedule. The 7 a.m. meeting was cancelled. The video conference with international investors rescheduled. Each email sent was an act of rebellion against the man he had become, a vote of confidence in the family he was on the verge of losing. He wasn't postponing work for an emergency. He was reclaiming his place as a father and husband. At 7 in the morning, he was in the kitchen, dressed in casual clothes, a sight so rare it startled Eleanor when she arrived. "Mr. Price, are you all right?" He smiled, a gesture that felt foreign on his own face. "I'm great. I'm here for the show." He then asked about Caleb's breakfast and learned about the Monday morning pancake tradition. "He says he needs extra energy for the exercises," Elena explained. The simple detail was like a stab to Nathaniel's chest. He didn't know the rituals that gave his son joy and strength. He was a stranger in the life of the person he loved most in the world. While they waited for Caleb to wake up, Nathaniel deepened the conversation. "Why do you care so much, Elena?" She then spoke more about her brother Daniel, not about the illness, but about life. She told him how she taught him to ride a bike by modifying the pedals, how she invented tabletop soccer games so he could compete. The most important thing, she said, was to celebrate every small victory as if it were the greatest achievement in the world. "I want Caleb to feel that way. I want him to know that every step, no matter how small, is a giant accomplishment." Her philosophy was simple and powerful. Healing wasn't in the muscles, but in self-confidence, in the feeling of being capable. When Caleb appeared in the kitchen, sleepy on his crutches, and saw his father sitting at the table, his face lit up with pure, radiant joy. "Daddy, you didn't go to work." "Not today, champ. Today my only job is to be your #1 fan," Nathaniel replied, his heart aching with a mix of happiness and years of regret. During breakfast, Caleb was a different child. He was talkative, animated, telling his father about all his progress, about the 3 steps he could now climb alone, about the grown-up stretches Elena had taught him. Nathaniel just listened, absorbing every word, feeling as if he were meeting his own son for the first time, discovering a universe of courage and determination that existed just a few feet from his office. At 8 o'clock sharp, they went out to the garden. Nathaniel saw Claire at the kitchen window, watching, her face a canvas of cautious hope. Eleanor rolled out a mat on the grass. "All right, my warrior, time to warm up." Caleb lay down and began to perform a series of stretches with a discipline that surprised his father. Nathaniel sat on the grass, a gesture he hadn't made since his own childhood, feeling like a privileged spectator at this sacred ritual. He watched the way Elena guided Caleb, a perfect blend of professional firmness and a tenderness that was almost maternal. She didn't treat him like a patient, but like an athlete preparing for the competition of his life. The main event began. "Now for balance," Elena announced. She helped Caleb to his feet and moved his crutches aside. "Remember our goal, 30 seconds. The boy nodded, his small face serious, focused on an invisible point in front of him. He stood, alone, his body trembling with the effort to stay steady. Nathaniel held his breath, each second dragging on for an eternity. "Daddy, are you watching me?" Caleb asked, without shifting his gaze. "I'm watching, son. You're the strongest person I know," Nathaniel whispered, his eyes filling with tears he didn't bother to hide. 25 seconds, Elena counted, her voice full of encouragement. "Almost there!" At the 30-second mark, Caleb shouted in triumph, but the burst of joy made him lose focus. He wavered and started to fall backward. Before panic could set in, Elena was there, catching him in a swift, practiced move. "I did it! Daddy! I did it!" he yelled, safe in her arms, the fall forgotten. The Victory celebrated. He was exhausted, sweaty, but his face radiated a pride so pure and intense it lit up the entire garden. Nathaniel rushed to them and hugged his son with a force that surprised him. "That was the most extraordinary thing I have ever seen in my life," he said, his voice choked. "I am so proud of you." Nestled between his father and his caregiver, Caleb looked up at Nathaniel. "Now, do you understand why I love the exercises?" Nathaniel looked at his son's beaming face, at Elena's gentle smile, and toward the window where he saw Claire discreetly wiping away a tear. "Yes, son," he replied, his voice finally steady. "Now I understand everything." In that moment, he realized the strength of his family wasn't in his bank account, but right there, on that lawn. The rest of the morning felt surreal to Nathaniel. He stayed home, working from his office, but with the door open for the first time in years. The sounds of the house, previously ignored, were now the focus of his attention. Elena's patient voice explaining a lesson to Caleb, the boy's laughter when he got an answer right. At lunch, Claire joined him, and they didn't talk about schedules or bills. They talked about Caleb's courage. The experience in the garden had created a fragile bridge over the abyss that separated them. A shared moment of pure parental pride they both thought they had lost forever. The mansion, for the first time, was starting to feel like a home. That afternoon, Nathaniel asked Elena to come to his office. She entered with the same hesitation as the first interview, her face anxious, clearly fearing that after the morning's euphoria would come the reprimand for breaking the rules. He had never called her for a formal conversation before. He asked her to sit, a gesture of respect that surprised her and increased her nervousness. She sat on the edge of a leather chair, her hands in her lap, bracing for the worst, for the possibility that the morning's miracle had just been a beautiful but forbidden exception to the rule. "Elena," Nathaniel began, his voice calm and serious, "what I witnessed today was proof that you have a gift. You have a connection with my son and a practical knowledge that no amount of money can buy." He paused, looking her directly in the eyes. "For that reason, I'd like to make you a proposal. I want you to stop being the cleaner and become Caleb's official therapeutic companion." Elena was stunned into silence, completely unable to process what she was hearing. His words didn't make sense. He wasn't firing her for overstepping, he was promoting her to a position she didn't even know existed. Overcoming her initial shock, Elena's first reaction was self-deprecation. "Mr. Price, I appreciate it, but I can't. I don't have a degree. I'm not a professional." Her voice was a reflection of a lifetime of being defined by her limitations, not her abilities. "What I do with Caleb comes from the heart, from my experience with my brother. It's not official." To her, the world was divided between knowledge validated by a piece of paper and her own, which, though effective, was considered informal and worthless. She saw an insurmountable barrier between who she was and what he was offering. Nathaniel leaned forward across the desk, his gaze steady. "The degree, we can fix that," he said with a simplicity that astonished her. "Would you like to go to college for physical therapy, Elena? To get the degree you deserve?" Before she could answer, he continued, "I will pay for everything, the tuition, the books, the transportation, and of course, I will increase your salary to reflect your new immense responsibilities. Your only job will be to study and continue doing for Caleb what no one else could." The proposal was breathtaking. It wasn't a job offer. It was the offer of a dream, a future she had long since buried. Elena couldn't hold back her tears. They streamed down her face, but they weren't the tears of sadness Nathaniel had seen before, but of a gratitude so overwhelming it left her speechless. The possibility of having a career, of giving a better future to her mother and brother through a job she loved, was a fantasy she had never allowed herself to entertain. "Sir, I don't even know what to say," she managed to articulate through her sobs. "Say yes, Elena," Nathaniel urged gently. "Caleb needs you, and you deserve this." With a nod, she finally whispered the word that would change her life forever. Yes. The agreement sealed in that room marked the beginning of a quiet revolution. Nathaniel immediately began looking for a new person to handle the household cleaning. Elena's focus would now be 100% on Caleb's development. That night, instead of coming home exhausted and preparing for the next day's journey, she researched physical therapy programs at nearby universities. A weight she had carried since she was a teenager had been lifted, replaced by an excitement and hope that made her feel like she could float. For Nathaniel, this was the first concrete action of his new life. He was no longer a passive father, he was an active investor in his son's future. When Claire learned of the arrangement, she was genuinely happy for Elena and especially for Caleb. However, a small worry settled in the back of her mind. How would their world react to this change? The line between an employee and a central member of their son's therapeutic team was now completely blurred. Elevating the maid to such an intimate and well-paid position in the family was a decision that would certainly attract gossip and judgment. The choice, while unquestionably the best for their son, set them on a direct collision course with the rigid and sometimes cruel social conventions of their elite community. The seed of a new conflict was planted. One action can change a life forever. Nathaniel gave Elena the opportunity she deserved, but will the world around them accept this new dynamic? Subscribe to the channel to find out, and tell us in the comments, have you ever had or given an opportunity that changed everything in your life? The following weeks solidified the new routine for the Price family. Nathaniel became a constant and anticipated presence in the mornings, actively participating in the exercises. He and Claire would sit together in the garden, no longer as strangers, but as proud parents, marveling at their son's progress. Motivated by his parents' attention and encouragement, Caleb flourished. The 30-second mark without crutches soon became a full minute. Physical therapy, once a source of pain and frustration, transformed into the highlight of the day, a time of unity and celebration. The atmosphere in the mansion, once cold and silent, was now warm, filled with a palpable hope and the constant sound of a little boy's laughter. This fragile peace, however, was threatened by the arrival of the outside world. One afternoon, Jessica, one of Claire's closest friends, came for a visit. She observed the new dynamic of the house with a critical eye, noting the familiarity between the family and Elena with visible discomfort. "It's very generous of you to invest so much in the help's education," she commented to Claire, the word help spoken with an emphasis that stripped Elena of any other identity. "But aren't you afraid she's taking advantage? By giving her so much power, you're blurring the lines." The comment was a subtle poison, an attempt to frame Nathaniel's act of kindness as a dangerous naivete. Later, Jessica found Elena and Caleb playing in the garden. Believing Claire was out of earshot, she approached Elena with a fake smile. "You've really played your cards right, haven't you?" she said, her voice low and cutting. "But be careful. People like you should know their place. You can take care of the child, but never forget that you are here to serve. Don't get confused." The words, loaded with a cruel classism, were designed to wound and humiliate, to reassert the social hierarchy she felt Elena was threatening. What she didn't count on was that the boy, just a few feet away, heard everything. Caleb dropped the toy he was holding and walked, leaning firmly on his crutches, until he stood between the two women. He looked directly at his mother's friend, his small face serious, his blue eyes flashing. "Don't talk to my Miss Elena like that," he said, his voice trembling with anger. "She is the best person in the world, and you are a mean person." The boy's fierce and unexpected defense left Jessica speechless, her face flushing with shame. Claire, who had witnessed the entire exchange from the terrace, felt a surge of fury at her friend and immense pride in her son's courage. In that moment, Caleb didn't need crutches to stand tall. That evening, the incident was the only topic. Nathaniel, upon learning what had happened, was livid. "I don't want that kind of person in our home anymore," he declared, his voice firm. "Elena is part of our family now. Anyone who treats her or any of our staff with that level of disrespect is not welcome here." For the first time in a long time, Claire saw in her husband the strong, principled man she had married. "You are absolutely right," she agreed without hesitation. "She was my friend, but what she did is unforgivable. I will end that friendship tomorrow." The decision, made together, solidified the couple's new alliance. The next day, the revelation of the consequences of Jessica's gossip arrived unexpectedly. Nathaniel received a call from Mark Jennings, a business rival. "Nate, I heard through the grapevine you have a miracle worker on your staff," Mark said. "Jessica told me. I want to make her an offer. Double what you pay, a car, full health benefits for her entire family. I need her for my grandson." The call was a shock. Jessica's malice had not only sought to humiliate Elena, but had also exposed her as a valuable asset on the market. Their family's private struggle had become a rumor in their social circle, and now a new and tempting threat loomed on the horizon. Nathaniel hung up the phone, a cold anxiety running through him. Mark Jennings's offer wasn't just generous, it was a weapon designed to tear Elena from their lives. He knew her precarious financial situation. The Nathaniel of a few months ago would have acted predatorily, using his power to pressure her. But the new Nathaniel, the present father, chose a different path. He decided to trust her. He wouldn't mention the call, hoping she would bring it to him herself. It would be the final test, not of her loyalty, but of his own transformation as a man and a father, choosing faith over control. The wait lasted 3 days. On Friday, Elena asked to speak with him privately. With a look of anguish on her face, she told him she had received a call from Mr. Jennings. She explained the proposal in detail, her voice faltering as she mentioned the benefits for her mother and brother. "It's an opportunity I never imagined I'd have, sir," she said, not looking him in the eyes. "My mother could finally stop working at night." The conflict within her was evident. The chance to give a better life to her family versus her loyalty to the family that had embraced her and the boy she loved. Nathaniel listened in silence, his heart tight. He saw the struggle in her eyes. Instead of making an immediate counteroffer, he asked questions. "Are you happy working here, Elena?" "Very," she answered without hesitation. "Do you see a future here with college, with your development?" "Yes, sir." "And Caleb? How do you think he would feel if you left?" The last question hit her hard. Tears welled in her eyes. "He would be devastated," she whispered. Nathaniel wasn't manipulating her. He was helping her weigh what money couldn't buy. "I'm not going to try to compete with Mark's money," Nathaniel said, surprising her. "But I will make a different proposal. I want you to stop seeing us as your employers and start seeing us as your second family." He then detailed his offer. He would match the salary, maintain the funding for her college education, and extend the company's health plan to fully cover her mother and brother. "I'm not buying your loyalty, Elena. I'm investing in the person who is rebuilding my family. I want you to stay because this is your place." Nathaniel's offer was much more than money. It was a gesture of belonging, of appreciation, of family. He wasn't just matching a rival proposal, he was formally inviting her into their core. Eleanor's tears were now of relief and emotion. The doubt that had tormented her dissipated. The choice became clear. "I'll stay," she said, her voice firm for the first time in that conversation. "Of course I'll stay, sir. This is my place. Caleb is my priority." The decision was not based on numbers, but on an incalculable value: love. That afternoon, Caleb found Elena in the garden, pensive after the conversation. Seeing the serious expression on her face, the boy felt a sudden fear. "Miss Elena, are you sad? Are you going to leave like the other ladies?" The question, born from a place of past insecurity and abandonment, broke Elena's heart. She knelt and hugged him tightly. "Never, my warrior. I'm not going anywhere," she whispered in his ear. "I'm going to stay right here to watch you run marathons if I have to." The promise, made with total conviction, calmed the boy's heart and solidified hers. The decision to stay seemed to unlock a new level of progress. In the following weeks, Caleb's confidence exploded. One day, during their exercises, something magical happened. He was practicing fast steps and, on an impulse, he ran. It was only 4 or 5 clumsy steps, but they were running steps. "Daddy, Miss Elena, I ran!" he shouted, his eyes wide with surprise at his own feat. Nathaniel and Elena ran to him, their emotions overflowing. It wasn't just a physical milestone, it was the breaking of a symbolic barrier. The boy, who could barely stand, was now running toward his future. Caleb's progress and the mature way Nathaniel handled Elena's crisis also healed the marriage. Claire saw the husband she thought she had lost. One night, she admitted that she had been seriously considering a divorce before all of this happened. "I felt so alone," she confessed. Nathaniel took her hand. "I know, and I am so sorry. I almost lost you both because of my blind ambition." The honesty between them was new and healing. The crisis didn't tear them apart. On the contrary, it forced them to find each other again, to rebuild their partnership based on a new set of priorities, with Caleb at the center of it all. Nathaniel now reflected on the irony of it all. He, the master businessman of hostile takeovers and aggressive strategies, had been saved by the simple kindness of his domestic worker. She had not only taught his son to walk, but had taught him, Nathaniel, how to be a father. She had taught his family how to reconnect. Mark Jennings's proposal, which he initially saw as a threat, turned out to be a blessing. It forced him to define Elena's true value, not in dollars, but in love, loyalty, and happiness. He understood that the greatest acquisition of his life wasn't a company, but the woman who came into his home to clean the floors and ended up cleaning their souls. 2 weeks later, Claire received a phone call from Jessica. The former friend called to apologize. She had heard about Nathaniel's counteroffer and Elena's decision to stay. "I was a fool, Claire," she said, her voice filled with a regret that seemed genuine. "I judged a person I didn't know out of pure prejudice. What your son did to defend her made me see the horrible person I was being." Claire accepted the apology with a polite distance. The friendship was irreparably broken, but the incident served as a filter, removing from their lives the people who did not share their new, more important values. With Elena's future now secure, Nathaniel began to think bigger. Seeing the impact her approach had on Caleb, he wondered how many other children were trapped in pessimistic diagnoses without access to someone who believed in them. A new idea began to form in his mind. What if they could replicate what Elena was doing? What if they could create a place that offered not just therapy, but hope? He hadn't shared the idea with anyone yet, but the seed of a new dream, one that involved helping other families, began to sprout, nurtured by the gratitude and the transformation he witnessed every day. Months later, at Caleb's preschool graduation ceremony, the family's true victory was revealed to the world. Nathaniel and Claire sat in the front row, next to Elena, the three sharing the same proud nervousness. When Caleb's name was called, he walked to the center of the stage, leaving his crutches behind. In a clear voice, he thanked his parents. "But today," he continued, "I want to dedicate my first run to my best friend and teacher, Miss Eleanor. She taught me to never give up." To the astonishment of everyone in the audience, he then ran from one end of the stage to the other, his steps firm, his smile radiant. The auditorium erupted in applause and tears. Still on stage, Caleb called for Eleanor to join him. He hugged her tightly. "This is my Miss Eleanor. She's family, he announced with pride. Nathaniel, seeing this, walked onto the stage, took the microphone, and validated his son's words. "My son is right," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Elena came into our home to clean our floors and ended up saving our family. She is, and always will be, a part of us." The public declaration, an act of love and gratitude, cemented Elena's new place, not as an employee, but as an essential pillar of that family, silencing any future gossip or judgment with the force of truth. After the ceremony, several parents of other children with special needs crowded around Elena, hungry for advice and the hope she radiated. Watching this scene, the seed of an idea that Nathaniel had been cultivating finally germinated. He saw the immense need and the unique gift that Elena possessed. That night, he proposed a new dream to her, a state-of-the-art therapy center, funded by him, but built on her philosophy of love, patience, and belief in unlimited potential. He no longer wanted to just fix his own family. He wanted to use his resources to help fix others, offering her the position of therapeutic director once she graduated. 2 years later, the Hope and Steps Therapy Center opened its doors. Elena, now a newly graduated and specialized physical therapist, was its director. Caleb, now 6 years old and running without any hint of his former difficulties, was the center's unofficial ambassador, a living symbol that the impossible was just an opinion. The center became the materialization of their journey, a place where children were not defined by their charts, but celebrated for their courage. It was the Price family's legacy, the transformation of their private pain into a purpose that benefited hundreds of other families, offering them the same hope that once seemed so distant. One day, Nathaniel received an unexpected call from Mark Jennings, his old rival. His tone was no longer arrogant, but humbled. He shared that his own grandson had been a patient at the center for 3 months, and the progress was miraculous. "I called to apologize, Nate," Mark said. "Back then, I saw a valuable employee to be acquired. I didn't understand I was trying to break up a family. You were right to protect her." The call was not just an apology. It was the final validation of Nathaniel's choice, a testament to the cascading impact that a single act of faith and appreciation could have, even turning a rival into an ally. Years later, Nathaniel found Caleb, now a confident young boy, in the garden. He reminded him of that first day he saw him on the floor, cleaning beside Eleanor. "Do you know what I thought that day?" Nathaniel asked. "I thought you were the bravest person I had ever seen." Caleb smiled. "And you know what I thought? That it was the first day you really looked at me, Dad, not at my legs, but at me." The exchange, simple and profound, was a summary of how far they had come. The garden, once the stage for a secret, was now the symbol of their open and loving relationship, a place of peace. The story of the Price family became a quiet legend. It taught them that guardian angels don't always have wings. Sometimes they arrive with an apron and a heart full of love. It showed that the strongest connections are forged not in moments of ease, but in shared struggle and mutual belief. They learned that a person's true worth is not in their job title, but in their capacity to see the best in others. The arrival of a domestic worker didn't just teach a boy to walk. It taught a father to love, a mother to trust, and a family to become whole again. A lesson of love and overcoming that reminds us where true value lies. What did you think of the transformation of Nathaniel and his family? Leave your sincere opinion in the comments, like the video if the story moved you, and subscribe to receive our new daily stories. Tomorrow's story might just change your perspective.